Hi, welcome to Blogging Heads TV. My name is Aryeh Cohen-Wade, and you're watching Culturally Determined. And my guest today is Phoebe Maltz Bovy. Phoebe, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm an American living in Toronto, Canada. I have a blog called What Would Phoebe Do? And I have a book coming out in spring, probably March 2017, about the idea of privilege. And I freelance write for a bunch of different publications.
Well, thanks for coming on with me today. We're going to talk about a couple topics. Let's start with the first one, which is one of the strangest political stories in a very strange political year. It has to do with the Star of David, or some would call it a sheriff's star, or even just a plain star. Probably most people have heard of this at this point, but do you want to kind of give a little background for people who kind of maybe are staying off Twitter or Facebook?
Sure.
Have heard about this?
Sure, and I think there's so much to say on this. So basically, Trump, the person I can't quite believe is actually the possible next president, tweeted something that was some image about corrupt Hillary with a backdrop of dollar bills or $100 bills or some sort of U.S. currency, and a star that turns out that was a Star of David, and that
was red.
Was right.
It said something in it, most corrupt ever.
Most corrupt, something like that. Yeah. So basically, what came out is I saw this in Mike, and I think some other places also wrote about it. That basically, it had come from a white supremacist site. This wasn't something where you could say, "Oh, well, if you look at it this way," no. Like this was just taken from a white supremacist site. And what was so
also known as the alt-right, which we can
yes, oh yes, yes.
I have had some run-ins with these people.
Oh well, I also have had run-ins with this Twitter before it was cool. You know, they were already after me, and
Me too.
Yeah.
We're like alt-right victims.
Absolutely, that's
before it was cool.
Yes. If only I had known you were supposed to talk about it and not just like block people for 2 weeks straight, to the exclusion of anything else.
You lost a chance to publicize it.
Yeah. It's a shame.
Embracing your victim status.
It's a shame.
Maybe we'll discuss a little more later.
Yeah. So basically,
this is metastasized as a story because Trump deleted it. Okay, he tweeted this image.
Well, first he didn't delete it for a while when it seemed like he had tweeted the circle one first, I think, before deleting the star one. He tweeted...
Okay, yeah. I thought he deleted it, then retweeted where the Star of David shape was replaced by a red circle.
But the circle, there were little... you could point it, right? The points were still there.
Viewers or other people on Twitter quickly noticed that the corners of the star were still visible. So it was
too much.
It was like a rush Microsoft Paint job.
Yes.
Put it back up.
Right.
And then a couple days later, what's weird about Trump is that he doesn't realize, or maybe he does, that when you talk about something more, the story continues. And so if he wanted the story to end, he could have not said anything about it, and then it would have eventually died down. Instead, he doubled down.
Yes, that's what's so strange about it, absolutely.
That he thought that it shouldn't have been deleted, and that there was nothing wrong with it, and he called it a sheriff star, or, quote, plain star. I don't know what a plain star is.
I don't either. No, I have no idea.
It actually is a thing.
I don't think so either.
So the story is strange 12 Ways to Tuesday. It involves this white supremacist, white nationalist movement called the alt-right that honestly I think is maybe around 500 people total, has a lot of cloned accounts, and it's kind of like a bunch of guys who know how to use Photoshop who don't like Jews, blacks, or Hispanics.
Right.
Women, probably.
Right.
And they create these memes or images, and so this one was like quasi-plausible deniability because it was really more of a wink. Like, if you've tangled with these people, I'm sure you've gotten stuff about put yourself in the oven.
Oh, yeah. So I got this. I've written some stuff to do with Jews specifically, being Jewish myself. And I wrote an article against guns, and that led to all kinds of mix of gun Twitter and that Twitter. So, and there's like a Stormfront page about me. Like, I I know this world well,
Okay.
and
Well,
hope,
you know
yeah.
better than I do. I got mixed up when it because Michael Brendan Doherty retweeted something that
Okay.
I wrote, and Doherty himself is not a member of the alt-right.
No, I follow him on Twitter, and he may follow me
he's
too.
kind
Yeah.
of sympathetic to kind of the reasons that someone would join the alt-right, or he's kind of a conservative dissident.
Right.
Anyway, I immediately got a lot of weird shit. That thing with the parentheses, I learned what that was about 3 months before everyone else because they threw it at me.
I see.
And yeah, and it's a weird mixture of like Holocaust denial and wishing another Holocaust, or like Holocaust celebration. It's kind of
yes.
Like one side of their mouth they're saying there was no Holocaust.
Yes. I mean, I think what matters, what matters with this is definitely more how Trump responds and how his campaign responds than the fact that there are on the internet people who are unhinged. Because I think
there's always going to be crazy people out there.
Right. I don't think that you can tell from those tweets, and even when it seems incessant, you can't really tell whether this is a lot of people, 5 very active people who know how to use Twitter in ways I don't totally understand. But I think if the fact that Trump doesn't say, oh, how terrible, that matters. The fact that he just kind of goes with it matters a lot more. And it also, there's a lot of, I guess, gray area in terms of voters. And it could be a wink, not just at really white supremacist voters, but also at people who are just a little bit sort of armchair bigoted against Jews and obviously other groups who like this, So it's not necessarily it's not new to mix anti-Semitism and that type of populism.
No, authoritarianism and anti-Semitism have a rich history, one would say.
Yes.
At least in the 20th century.
Yes.
Before that as well.
Definitely before that.
I think you talked about you wrote your thesis about Jews in France in the 19th century.
Yes, I did, and it's all over again. It all seems very familiar, and it's not just similar to the 1930s. There are other analogies from earlier.
Did you read the Chait piece that was posted today about Hitler's rise?
So the reason I haven't yet and had kind of ignored it was because it just seemed too obvious to me what the parallels would be, and I am interested to know what other. I'll take a look later.
It's more about why Hitler was given power.
Oh, okay.
In those final few weeks before he took power.
I see.
And kind of how the conservatives in Germany who wanted to bring down the Weimar Republic saw Hitler as kind of like their stooge.
I see. Oh.
To be able to control.
Oh, so it's more detailed than I had anticipated from the headline. I should know better.
Yeah, it's worth reading.
Oh,
and,
okay.
Yeah, I will include a link to that. Okay, so what are your deep thoughts about this? Why do you think Trump is just kind of reveling in this stuff? What do you think?
I think there's a few things going on, but I'm going to just step back to kind of contextualize it a bit. So basically, there's been a conversation among many American and also British, maybe Canadian Jews online, in person even a bit, about the new anti-Semitism, and the consensus being that it comes from the left, and that whether it's campus activists or academics, it's this anti-Semitism that it's not so much straightforward anti-Semitism as more that in progressive circles you can't really complain about anti-Semitism without this coming across as that you're just trying to support Netanyahu in some roundabout way. And I think there's a lot to this. I've made sort of hopefully more nuanced versions of this argument myself. And I think there is certainly anti-Semitism on the left and has been since, the 19th century, if not earlier. But I think what's been so interesting and strange about this whole thing with Trump and the Star and these Twitter Nazis and all of this is that now suddenly it's clear that there's something potentially a lot more mainstream, given that Trump is a presidential candidate and not an obscure Oberlin student. So that anti-Semitism from the right might be maybe more dangerous. And I say this as somebody who's totally been ready to call out anti-Semitism on the left. It's just, I think, an actual presidential candidate posting what he posted is just, it's just a bigger deal, apart from anything else.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think there's an actual constituency in America for this kind of stuff, and how big do you think it is?
That's a good and important question. So I think what's happened is there's been a shift in the GOP in terms of what they're selling, and in terms of sort of, it's hard to really say how voters themselves feel about all this, but where all this discussion of the white working class as the new really oppressed group, and with journalists sort of fighting amongst themselves over who really knows what it's like to be white working class, no matter how preposterous. So instead of there being sort of concern, like this just has become kind of sort of on the right, but also just kind of even in the center, or maybe even on the left a bit, although it's sort of a little different on the left. Just this notion that people who are white working class, which can include a very wealthy white Trump supporter who, and I don't mean a specific one, it can include his supporters who are wealthy but just feel kind of aggrieved, so they can count in this category.
Like someone who owns a car dealership?
Or just like there was that, I think it was on 538, about how his supporters are actually a lot wealthier and better educated than one might think. And certainly than the sort of narrative of you picture sort of Appalachia, and that's not quite...
Well, he won the reason he won more delegates than anyone else is that he had a surprisingly broad cross-section. I think I joked on Twitter that he combined Jesus freaks, juggalos, and massholes into a winning coalition.
That can be right, yes. So basically, the way things have reshifted towards this kind of populism where white people are the real victims, according to this populism, not according to me, and combined with this sort of isolationism, wariness of trade, wariness of cosmopolitanism, which has become a big topic.
Which is weird because Trump himself is very cosmopolitan.
Right. So, I mean, I have a kind of like outlandish theory about this that I don't think anybody wants to publish, which is that I think that Trump is trying to preemptively deflect a sort of like quasi anti-Semitism directed at himself, because here he is, this like, New York billionaire, or so-called billionaire, self-proclaimed billionaire, who has a Jewish daughter and a New York accent. And so maybe he's just trying to, I mean, I don't think there's enough like evidence to ever prove that, but I don't know. I think it's obviously odd for somebody like this, even just anybody who's rich and from New York, to sort of claim to be saving the country from people who are rich and from New York is a kind of strange thing. But I mean, I think in terms of, just to go back to your really important question, is there a constituency for this? I wouldn't have thought so, but if things reshift, because I think what used to be the case is that the Republican Party for a while was, claiming to be the party of pro-Israel. Whether or not this actually helps Israel, their version of pro-Israel, is its own question. But
pro-Likudnik would be. Yeah,
something like that. But they were claiming at least to be sort of, even though they were saying stuff like more on Christmas, cosmopolitan, or no, then it was coastal elites, like with Sarah Palin. But they could also say, well, but we love Israel, we are on your side, or something like that. And now I think that if things reshift such that that part is no longer sort of on the Republican side and is more sort of on the Hillary Clinton side, there isn't really the same buffer, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah. I think this sounds like a deep point to me. That's right. So a lot of there's been a kind of a steady stream of conservative intellectuals saying they won't vote for Trump or endorsing Hillary Clinton for president.
Right.
And the two ones I can think of are Robert Kagan and Elliot Abrams. Is that right? That both.
There's also Crystal, right?
Bill Kristol.
He's also.
Okay, these are all Jewish neoconservatives.
Right. So then that's also, yes, and I think that this understandable rejection of those figures. I think it all kind of relates, and I think it is possible. I mean, I think what you see with what's happened with this Star tweet is that you can get kind of
a Stargate, by the way.
Stargate. Oh, sure.
First person to say this, honestly, on Twitter.
Stargate sounds good to me.
Stargate.
Okay, so I think with Stargate, you see that there can be kind of really, really excited anti-Semitism against a candidate who is not Jewish, and that's not really about Jews but I think that's often the case. I mean, in terms of actual people he's likely to harm if elected, it seems like Jews wouldn't be the top of the list. It would be Muslims, Mexicans, a lot of other groups perhaps before Jews. I don't think it's that history repeats itself in exact terms. I don't think the history is the same in the US as in Germany, or in Europe in general. So I don't know that I'd focus on it from that perspective specifically, but I think there could be a base for this. And I think so. We were talking about the idea of like Jews and privilege, this conversation of where Jews are accused of having privilege, and this has been a big thing on the left. But I think it's exactly the same thing on the right. It's just the people who anti-Semites on the right accuse Jews of having privilege over are ordinary, so-called normal white Americans.
Well, the kind of, wacko theory is that the Jews are a hidden hand controlling history, or that the Jews want to, have their own nefarious goals.
Yes.
And this goes back to the protocols of the Elders of Zion. Okay, so, why do you think Trump, with his Jewish daughter and Jewish grandchildren, and I'm sure he has many Jewish friends, and the Jews love him.
Well, of course, yes. Every group does, yes. Anything with a definite article,
the black love him, the gays love him. This is all. I'm saying this all.
Right, of course.
It's viewers. Why is he? Is he stupid? Is he clever like a fox? What do you think he's trying to do with all this stuff?
Well, I think I would just first of all sort of like, as other people have already done, pretty much like on Twitter, possibly already in articles as well, I would sort of dismiss the question of what he personally feels about Jews, because I think that's both unknowable and kind of irrelevant. Like, also, and this was something I think I'd gotten into a bit on Twitter earlier, was like, I mean, the fact that there are Jews in his family through marriage doesn't really say anything either here or there, because so that's like in 19th century France, that would not have meant anything. And I don't think it does anymore today. But in terms of why,
one of them is his name Max Blumenthal, Sidney Blumenthal's son.
Right.
Who are on the left version of this, where obviously Blumenthal is Jewish.
Right.
He hates Israel so much. He thinks Israel is the cancer of our world, that he is attacking Elie Wiesel.
Yes, that's its own thing. But yes,
we don't have to go into that.
No, I mean, we'll see if there's time. But so basically, in terms of why Trump is doing this, I mean, I think there's two reasons, right? Like, I think one is this sort of he or some handlers or whatever, somebody has figured out that there's a shift politically, and that the right needs to be more sort of populist, nationalist, isolationist to win over whichever various segments of the electorate. But I think it's also, and this comes back to something that I'm forgetting his name right now, of course, the guy who used to work for him and then was fired, who went on TV and called it
Lewandowski?
Yes, that guy called it political correctness. So then there's also this thing of telling it like it is, and he's running on that. So I think
telling it like Jews and their money, just telling it like.
Well, I think it's just this sort of not holding back, And I think if he's running on shooting his mouth off, that's certainly shooting his mouth off. And then, of course, there is, as you have discussed yourself, the possibility that it's all some sort of bizarre thing out of the
producers.
Yes,
the producers.
Yes. So that's
or the Blogging Heads audience defending.
But that's the only other possibility, because assuming he actually wants to be president,
which is an assumption that I don't make.
It's very odd.
In that, but I think events are proving me truer day by day.
I mean, yeah. Initially, when I saw that Trump was actually a contender and all this, I thought, well, like, I didn't know much about him. I thought, okay, well, Bloomberg became mayor. It wasn't, the world didn't stop turning. Whatever you think of him as a mayor, it wasn't that strange. But then he's not like that. It's something else. And I would never have thought we'd have like a fascist dictator who's Donald Trump. It's just very weird. But anyway, we don't yet. So
election since 1860. Just side note, I know you used to live in Princeton, New Jersey.
Yes.
You grew up in New Jersey?
No, I grew up in New York City. So I'm very, very cosmopolitan.
Oh, so you are a
yes.
cosmopolitan.
Yes.
Okay, well, when you were growing up, you're probably about the same age I am. When you were growing up in New York City, didn't you know who Donald Trump was?
Yeah, but it's kind of, I know, yeah, he's like one of these sort of...
like Al Sharpton.
David
Dickens, or Rudy Giuliani.
I mean, I knew that his daughter was like at a dance that I was at. Like, I knew who he was and that he like existed in the same city, but I mean, I was not in like his milieu, whatever that might be. And
milieu was just like the tabloid world.
I guess he seemed kind of like some sort of 1980s caricature who had like, I mean, his name is on stuff and it always seems kind of like intentionally tacky looking stuff. And it just like, but I never thought about him, like this is just, he just seemed like some sort of random, it just seems like completely out of the blue to me that this has happened. But then now, like, I've subsequently read about like the earlier profiles and stuff. So I guess it's maybe not that strange, but.
Okay, well, maybe I paid more attention to tabloid headlines than you did. I used to sometimes read the Daily News when I was a kid because the New York Times, which we had delivered to our house, didn't have the cartoons in it.
And where was this?
This was in northern New Jersey.
In northern New Jersey, okay. This was in northern New Jersey. Okay.
New Jersey. I just have a sense of who he is as essentially a con artist.
Yes.
World's most successful con artist because he keeps running scam after scam. And yet he's not in jail.
Yeah.
He's not ruined in the way that, like, Bernie Madoff or someone.
Yeah.
To mention another well-known figure.
Yes, of course. Certainly.
Was ruined. Like, he has a remarkable capability to bounce back and to skate away from what he's done. He's like, Harold Hill in The Music Man. He's like the Duke and the King from... literatures from Mark Twain's famous work, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. He is this kind of American character.
Yeah.
He scams you, and then you're still smiling at the end. Although a lot of people are smiling, like people who paid $35,000 to Trump University. Right.
I mean, I think it's very possible, whatever he entered into this thinking, that he would win and then become president. I mean, I think that's just how it works. Like, I don't find that implausible.
I think he doesn't want to be president.
He may not want to, but
at this point,
it can happen. Sometimes you apply for the job and you get it.
Like in The Music Man, they actually did buy the musical instruments and have a parade. As far as I remember. But Donald falls in love with the school teacher. Donald Trump is not going to fall in love with Hillary Clinton.
Oh, well, that would be different.
I'm taking this metaphor way too far. She was at his wedding. That's another strange thing.
Right. I mean, there's always the sense that they're all kind of behind the scenes hanging out and chummy with each other, all these, like, important people. I don't know. It could be.
Sure. And Donald could have a great time together if you gave them, like, 48 hours in a long weekend, like a weekend together, and like a lot of money and a lot of like booze.
Yeah.
Actually, although Donald doesn't drink, but
that's right. That's
of Bill Clinton lately. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
It's 10 years older than he actually is. Okay, why don't we? Do you have anything else to say about the star, Stargate, the plane star, the Jewish star, the sheriff star?
Don't vote for Donald Trump. It's a bad idea. Fascism. Maybe not so great.
Endorsement.
Yes.
No, you're Hillary.
I am pro Hillary. Yes.
You're with her?
I'm with her. Even if it weren't quite so absurd. Yeah.
I'm more anti-Hillary than pro-Hillary, but you go to war with the army you have.
That seems, as long as, yeah, that's understandable. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, why don't we talk about this article you wrote that was really interesting. And it has to do with this whole idea of experience versus stuff, which is really, it's something that I've actually taken to heart in some ways in my own life, but has really become almost I think you called it a banality in your article. So why don't you tell us about this article, which had a great title. It was Rose Before Homes.
Yes. I didn't choose the title, but I really like it. So
yeah,
I fully endorse it.
Great article. We'll include the link. So why don't you tell us a little bit about this
Thanks.
article?
Well, thank you. Yes. So basically, I've been obsessed for a while with this idea of stuff versus experiences and this notion that experiences are supposed to be better than stuff. And I've written about it before from the perspective of both class, like social class, and just simply money, like how much money you have. And pretty much the consensus around a lot of people is that this minimalism is basically just a new way to flaunt being upper class. I think also more specifically, if you just don't have a lot of money, whether that's long term or you're a broke grad student, it doesn't really even matter for this specifically. If you just don't have a lot of money, stuff just becomes more appealing than it is when you know that you can just buy whatever you feel like. So this is something I can think of in my own life, and I think it's just kind of common sense in a way. So I think part of saying that you're indifferent to stuff, and this especially around like
just a step back.
Sorry.
Kind of the core of this is that it's an advice for how you should spend your money.
Exactly.
Saving up for like a sports car or a really great like stereo system.
Yes.
You should save up your money for like a great vacation with friends.
Exactly.
Or something, or you should go like hike the Appalachian Trail.
Yes. Although I think it's a lot more, and this kind of gets into what I was talking about a bit in the article, I think it's a bit more gender than that, where it's often like instead of going to the mall, you should be like on a mountain looking down, and that would be better, So I think it's a lot like stuff is often assumed to be kind of women's stuff, even though, as you say, it can be things like a sports car that are more sort of stereotypically male. But yeah, so basically this has been discussed a lot in terms of there's even just like a new BuzzFeed article about this tiny houses. I haven't read it yet. I just clicked on it. The tiny house movement is also about privilege, like class privilege and all of this. So this is kind of an argument that's been made a lot and that I think is sort of fair, and there's really not much to add at this point. But what I had found so funny was that there had been these two articles in fairly quick succession that are very different in a way. One was this very sort of respectful profile of the filmmaker Whit Stillman at home in Paris. And
they just dropped in on Whit.
Yep,
Companion. Actually, have you seen the new movie that he directed?
I haven't yet. I have nothing against him or his work. This is purely about this particular article being just kind of funny because it was, and it's also just kind of the way it's framed in a very much style section way, where it's sort of half praising him, half possibly sort of surreptitiously insulting him for.
That's a classic New York Times Sunday styles.
A friend of mine has a whole theory about this, but I don't know if she wants to be cited, so. Anyway, ask my friend.
Written a deep sociological analysis.
There's something I think
time style.
There is one. There's like a really long form thing about this. I think in the All or something. But anyway, with this Whit Stillman thing, it was basically he lives in this Parisian penthouse duplex or top floor duplex or something with his aristocratic girlfriend. And
aristocratic, you mean literally, right?
Like literally aristocratic, like she comes from patrician roots, which in the French context, I don't know what else that means. Basically, he's living this life of splendor, but the whole twist of the article is that it's his duffel bag sized lifestyle because it didn't quite add up. It's like most of his stuff could, or he'd like it to be able to fit in a duffel bag. His stuff being defined, I guess, as his clothing, because even though he has a partner, maybe he doesn't own the furniture. It didn't.
Yeah, there's photos of like vases and stuff that obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, but like, I can't quite like I think I would win the apartment minimalism contest there. But like looking at my IKEA couch over the computer. But yeah, it was just funny because it was about how proud he is of his sort of Spartan lifestyle. Which fine, yeah, maybe his pants are a little old and worn out, but like he's living in the Marais in like a palace, and it was just hilarious. I mean, I wasn't offended by it. I just found it very funny. You know, it wasn't like, oh no, outrage. It was just like, well, that's like a very fine example of this genre. And, you know, so I kind of like flagged it on Twitter or whatever and didn't really think about it much. But then there was this article that was just like some sort of weird, outlandish, extreme version of this, by, I don't know if it's a pseudonym or just his first name. Well, I know it's, yeah, I don't know if his real first name is Tony or not, but Slate called it a pseudonym. Maybe they looked into it more. But in any case, he does not give his last name. He goes by Tony.
Tony from Toronto.
Tony from Toronto, 31. And then, oh, this is just a slight side note. I overheard two people in Toronto talking about this article and like reading it, like the paper version after I'd already written this thing. And like the guy is like Team Tony on this, but I'll explain who Tony is. It was really weird. It was surreal.
Tony is someone who loves life. That's how
yeah, exactly. Tony is having a nice time. You probably, if you are a straight woman, dated Tony for like a date or two when you were like 22, just, you know, maybe. I'm not like, he does not specifically line up with anybody I have in mind, but he's just kind of like some sort of composite type where basically he lives at home, even though he makes a lot of money, so that he can just
make so much money. He says he's a pharmacist. How
the Canadian dollar,
the medicine up there.
The Canadian dollar is really weak, so the numerical salaries look high. That's all I'll say on that note. But
the salary is 130,000 Canadian dollars a year.
It sounded high to me too, but I think who knows? I mean, it could be that he
Medicare now. I mean, if the pharmacist is making that much money, it can't be that bad, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's who knows? Who knows? It could be that that's like details changed, and maybe he's like actually an accountant or something. Who knows? But
that makes more sense. Yeah, they want to
right. I mean, that could be. Who knows? Or he's just bragging, or according to some editor there, I think he is like a real person, because I had a kind of theory that maybe this was all fiction. Basically,
it's like kind of satire. It's self-satire in a way.
Yeah, except I think he's sincere. So Tony. So again, he's 31. I think this is relevant for this. Because he lives at home and his mother does his laundry and provides his meals, he uses his remaining time and money to enjoy life. He goes on very, I'm trying to think of a way to say this without the word douchey. He goes on very,
just say it.
He goes on very douchey vacations with his bros and who are, you know, other guys in Toronto, and they basically they have expensive wine. They don't do anything very like interesting. They just kind of like indulge in the sorts of rich people things that can be kind of looked down upon, both in a sort of like, sort of punching up way and in a kind of punching down way, like, oh, how tacky Tony is, you know? So like everybody can hate it, you know? It was like something that...
That's right. The actual rich people can look down on this guy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know,
as like nouveau riche or whatever.
As like he's like wants to drink like Chateau Rothschild or something.
Yes.
Not to tie this back to the first part of the conversation.
Yes. So, right.
And then the people who are the struggling grad students or the people who produce content for online periodicals.
Yes.
And look at this guy and be like, what a douchebag.
Right, exactly. So it did not come across as likable, and nor did it come across as kind of like decadent in a kind of interesting way. Like the thing that really did get to me and that I mentioned in my piece is that basically he's bragging about using a wine app to keep track of his wine. And I could just imagine somebody, sorry, my dog is having a very interesting dream over there and like twitching her arm. I could just imagine sitting with somebody explaining about the wine app and being like, why, like, who cares? Like, it just seemed really, like, I just couldn't imagine anybody caring other than him about which wine he's having. And it's not like he's a wine expert or something. He just likes to have.
Well, not yet.
Well, he's
The app is for.
but it's like, I don't know. It just seemed kind of like some kind of social media account you would unfollow of an acquaintance or something. I don't know. It just had this
Instagram. It's like an Instagram lifestyle thing where it's like, oh my God, he's on a mountain.
Yeah.
He's in Iceland now.
Yeah. It just
he goes to like, the place where like where scenes from The Hangover.
Yes, and he gets a massage, and he does actually go shopping. That is one of the things he does. So he isn't actually against. So that's why, like, so he wasn't in some respects the best representative of this whole minimalism phenomenon, because he's not quite a minimalist. He's definitely pro experiences. So he has experiences. And then there's some line that I quote that's where he's basically saying that the reason he doesn't own a home, and he's a little shakier on why he doesn't just rent one, but
his mom would have laundry for him.
Well, clearly, I mean, like, I'm renting in Toronto. It does exist here. But, so the reason he doesn't have his own place is because he wants to just experience life. And then there's also some side note about the Toronto real estate market, which is very Toronto specific and not of probably much interest to anybody else. It's like apartments are expensive here. Not as
expensive real estate market.
Yeah. I mean, not New York expensive, but still quite expensive. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so Tony is absurd in some ways, but what is, I'm sure, like, he'd be like a fun guy to hang out with, especially if he's picking up the tab.
Well, that's the tab, but
with Tony,
he just seems very dull. I mean, I feel like that's like he's not spending the money in any like at all interesting or even like sort of fun. Like he's just. Well, I don't know.
Is your thing also kind of like he's just a tacky guy?
No, because that's the thing. So that was what I found kind of frustrating about. In a way, he was the most fun example to open the piece with, but also in a way not the best example, because then some of the responses I got from people who liked the piece were like, "Yeah, Tony's an asshole," and it's like, I mean, sorry if I'm allowed to say that.
No, go for it.
Okay, so like, oh, Tony's a terrible person, whatever. And it's like, that was not the point of the article. I have nothing against Tony as like, I don't think he's like unethical. What I wanted to...
If you're out there and you want to visit Rochester, New York and pick up the tab for a night of fun, I'll show you a bit. We'll paint the town red.
That's not too far for him to go. But yeah, I was going to say, so basically, what had struck me about this really was just this notion that I'd been hearing again and again and again, that experiences are better than stuff, and not just better, but more ethical, more noble. And I thought that here was, yes.
What is better? What is better, stuff or experience?
So I don't think that this is a case of one being better than the other. I think that people have forced this kind of ethical assessment on it where there isn't one. I think in terms of... which is more spiritual, which is more wasteful. I mean, in terms of which involves more money or which involves more sort of like waste, it could be either, So I don't think there's any objective answer. I think, so something that came out, I think certainly after I wrote the piece, probably after it was published, in any case, it was something in the Times, the style section. There was some guy in his mid-20s, went on a 10-month, I believe, trip, like a road trip to national parks. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't douchey at all. It was just, like he went on this trip. He had a lot of time. I guess, he had a budget.
That is something you can do on the cheap is,
well,
you go to national parks.
You can, but it's still not working for 10 months, which, not available to all, but certainly not Tony level of indulgence. But then again, Tony's working. But what I thought,
Tony down a solid salary. Okay, here's a question.
Yeah.
Do you think Tony voted for Rob Ford?
Oh, yeah. No, I don't know. Maybe, probably.
He doesn't vote.
Yeah, well, he was certainly old enough to. But so... I think though, but what I thought was just so funny though about this thing with the 10-month national park trip is, well, there's nothing wrong with doing that, and I think it's great if you enjoy it. both was clearly about him, like in his own personal journey of self-discovery. So it wasn't something altruistic, which is fine. Like, but
what if he picked up an orphan child in each different state that he went to? And
I think he'd have probably
the majesty of the great American land.
I think he'd have mentioned it in the piece of
Right. Well, I mean, sometimes
or maybe he's so selfless.
Of mitzvah.
That's true.
Where, you don't talk about it.
Right. But also, and then the piece ends, and this was what I found so funny, is that it ends with this whole long thing about which car he used and what a great car it is. So it ends kind of like a car commercial.
The sponsor.
Well, it would seem that way.
Was it sponsored content?
Not officially, I don't think. It was part of the Times' National Park series.
Okay, we'll include the link, and people can decide for themselves whether this is actually advertorial or something.
It seemed at the end a little bit. It certainly, I mean, in a weird way, I hope the car company paid him, because otherwise, I don't know what he's doing for 10 months in the prime of his working life, just like driving around.
Yeah.
But
was his last name Rothschild?
yeah, no, but it just, yeah. So basically, I just don't think there's an answer to this, and I think that the reason. This is where the whole question of sexism, classism, and I'll get into this in a moment, because there's also a sort of another angle to this. But basically, I think all of this explains how it's come to be that people think an experience is inherently better than a thing in that way. And if there even is this clear-cut divide, which I'm not so sure, I think it's about things that seem to do with the home, to do with clothing, especially material things are considered worse simply in part because of who's associated with those things.
Yeah. Did Tony talked about his clothes at all? I confess that I haven't read the entire piece.
I don't remember.
Like, is he shopping at Salvation Army, and then as he goes to sample all these wines?
The only thing I remember about clothing is that he was somewhere in Asia, possibly Hong Kong, maybe I'm misremembering, and they were watching people shop for some kind of handbags or something. I don't know, but I don't remember if he talks about his clothes.
Yeah.
But what I just found so interesting, though, about the responses to this article were that, like, there were sort of two main ones, and they were kind of...
By this article, do you mean Tony's?
Oh, sorry, no, to the one I wrote, because there were, like, a ton of responses, but some were people saying that I had forgotten various isms, like, that it's not just sexist, it's also, and then, like, every single other, form of bigotry that minimalism could also potentially, some of which I thought was persuasive, some of which...
Okay, can you just lay out as succinctly as possible, and we'll link to the piece and encourage people to read it, your case that there's like a latent sexism...
Yes, that is what I skipped, yes. So basically, what was the common factor of this Tony absurd personal essay and the very... genteel Whit Stillman in his residence profile. But there was something very similar about these two, which is that both of these were men kind of claiming, like, I don't need these bourgeois comforts, but I don't know if either used the word bourgeois, certainly not Tony. But then Tony has his mother doing his laundry and has this home that must be somebody has it, like his parents' house,
Somebody's paying.
Yeah, somebody's paying for this.
Canada,
yeah, exactly. And
did Tony say whether he pays rent?
Yeah, he said they don't let him.
Oh, well.
Which, yeah. But
for Chateau.
Yeah.
67.
Exactly. So, but then with Stillman, there he is, and I wasn't as clear on the finances of all of this, but it's like, it's not really his place, it's like his girlfriend's house, his girlfriend's furniture. And it just, exactly, he's just, yeah, and it just, I guess it reminded me of just a certain type of guy or a certain sort of even type of conversation I've had with just like fleeting acquaintances, where they sort of, and it's always men who sort of are like, yeah, I don't need these like bourgeois comforts. And it's like, there's always some woman, like a mother or female partner kind of behind,
of everyday life.
Yeah, so it just seemed kind of funny, but like I guess the thing is, like, I wasn't actually like outraged about this, if that makes sense. Like, I just thought it was kind of funny, and like, this is obviously, as there's like more pressing, certainly feminist issues. I was coming at this more from a sort of like part one or part three. I don't know, in my many part stuff is not necessarily worse than experiences, than like some sort of, yeah, so that was basically where I was coming at it from.
Okay, do you want to make the pro-stuff case? The anti-experience pro-stuff case? Because I'm more pro-experience than pro-stuff.
Well, then you should make the pro-experience case first, maybe. Since that's the more common one, I think.
Yeah, so this has become kind of, you said called banality, a commonplace of our era, that, you should prioritize your experiences in your life as opposed to like buying material objects. I think a lot of this came out of the financial collapse and the Great Recession. The generation kind of a little bit before ours, the people who bought houses and our parents who bought houses and baby boomers, they prioritize stuff like getting like an extra 500 square feet on their house, or furnishing that house, which is expensive. Like, I think a lot of this is a reaction to that. It like almost brought down the entire global economy, this house of cards, all based around wanting to get a bigger house and have more stuff. So I think that's kind of like the economic determinism backdrop to this. The other thing is just that, like, most stuff sucks. Like, do you really, like, how much stuff do you need? After a certain point, there's some term for this that is escaping me, but it's diminishing marginal utility. Like, if Tony were like collecting wine bottles instead of drinking them, if he got the like 170th bottle of wine for his collection, would it give him that much more pleasure than bottle 3?
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to me that there's nothing morally wrong with buying stuff and prioritizing one or the other. That's everyone's personal choice. I don't think, that you can have beliefs about how it contributes to your carbon footprint or whatever. But it does seem to me that you're more likely to be happy in life if you're more interested in experience. And experience doesn't have to be jetting off to Thailand to, have like the best Tom Kha ever made. The experience could just be spending time with your family, or walking in a park, or going to visit a national park, which the entrance fee of most national parks is like $11 or something, a nominal cost.
Right.
Like, seems to me, the path to happiness seems to be more based on like accepting like all the garbage in the world, and not like bringing more of that garbage into your house, literally. and trying to find meaningful experiences. So I hope I didn't get too deep there.
No, that was very, I'm glad you said all that, because I think that's a much fairer case for experiences, certainly, than the kind of cartoon Tony, like, wine and Thailand version. I'll address each of those and also just sort of make the case for stuff sort of a little beyond that too. So basically, in terms of the recession and collapse of the global economy and that angle, what's interesting, and there was actually just another article in the Times about this, is that what's replaced sort of competitive, keeping up with the Joneses accumulation of property has been, to some extent, just ostentatious experiencing and then Instagramming of.
Fear of missing.
Right, exactly. So basically, it can be just as sort of shallow, and it can be equally. So I think that the pursuit of experiences and the pursuit of stuff can be equally shallow and equally about what other people want you to want. You know what I mean? So what a case for stuff wouldn't be,
noble truths is that attachment causes suffering. I believe. I want to bring Bob right in here to give us a Buddhism lecture. But if you attach too much to anything, it'll cause suffering. And so if you're like, oh man, I have to go to like the best like Thai restaurant in Thailand, or else I'm missing out.
Now I really want Thai food from this conversation, but yeah.
It's just as bad at thinking like, oh, I need that sports car, otherwise.
Right. So that I think that it's equally bad, or if one even wants to give a moral anything to this, it's no different to pursue experiences to show off than to pursue stuff to show off in a certain sense, and they can equally involve spending beyond one's means. So in terms of so both, I think, like, you can be expressing what you personally are like and value and enjoy and find aesthetically pleasing through a purchase, or you could be buying the house, car, handbag you think you have to own. So these both exist. So I think that sometimes shopping gets kind of caricatured as that people are, as if everybody's sort of the most neurotic middle school student and is shopping for the right jeans if their parents let them have the money for them or whatever, something like that. And it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't even have to be expensive. And then what I would even say beyond that, in terms of stuff being junk, is I don't think that valuing stuff means owning more of it or spending more on it. It just means getting enjoyment out of what you're buying. So I think that the people who are sort of team experiences are going to whatever Banana Republic, I'm naming a store I don't even like. I don't know. Like, they're going to whichever stores. They're owning stuff too. They're just not liking that. They're not enjoying it.
Unless Tony is walking around naked, he owns some stuff.
Right. So I mean, basically, I don't think that if you own the appropriate amount of stuff for your life and are not overspending and are not overly wasteful, whatever.
Is it Marie Kondo?
Well, there was just another, yeah.
She talks about, probably most people have heard this at this point, this woman Marie Kondo, I don't think that's her actual name, but she's a Japanese woman who wrote this book about decluttering, and my wife and I both read it and kind of decluttered.
Oh, did you do it? Did you,
well, not full on.
Yeah.
Full on, but we did do the clothes. We got a lot of clothes.
Yeah.
Well, her whole thing is you're supposed to take an object, and I will pick an object from my desk. So this object is something I found in my childhood home, and it's an action figure of the character Beast from X-Men. And then you're supposed to hold it in your hands and decide if it sparks joy in your heart or your soul or whatever. And then I saved this one because I always identified with the character Beast from X-Men. And this is what he looked like in the 90s, and it's a little metal figurine. And so I keep it on my desk because it does spark joy. But I don't, the other ones got sent to Salvation Army. So that's kind of the Marie Kondo. It's like you have to have some stuff.
Yeah.
If it doesn't spark joy, which sounds cliche, but if you don't enjoy it, then you should send it on its way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any, I definitely have this book and have tried to fold my T-shirts correctly, and I have a T-shirt drawer that's like half Marie Kondo folded T-shirts and like half just I gave up and fold them normally.
You only went half.
Well, no, I did upon moving. Like everything was folded right. I was so proud. I took a picture. I Instagrammed the picture and everything. I think even, and then.
Well, that was the experience.
Oh yeah, exactly. But yeah, that aspect. No, I mean, so there's actually a big story in the Times Magazine this weekend and this
I didn't read that one yet.
Yeah, it just appeared, and it's Taffy Brodesser-Akner, who's a great writer. So it's.
Is that finally the Marie Kondo takedown we've all been waiting for?
Well, no. So there have been a bunch actually. There've been a bunch of Marie Kondo takedowns, but this is just sort of
it continues to make the millions.
Yeah, well, what I found so striking, there was one line in this article that really jumped out at me, which was from somebody who now, I guess, works for her, about how she decided to this was before working for her, she decided to do the KonMari method and declutter and lost 3 pounds. And the reason I thought this was so amazing was because it's like, of course that's what this is. Of course this is diet advice on some level, because everything directed at women is like diet advice. So even this has to be like, and then she was thinner. Okay. And like, yeah. So that was yeah.
To bring together these two parts of this topic, what does Marie Kondo spend her money on?
Well, what I think is so interesting with
right?
But I don't think this is actually the same as really minimalism, because it's more about that you're constantly potentially throwing things out. So if I were to really go through my sock drawer and decide if they all spark joy, I mean, there's a lot that in there that's just like kind of old and not that great. If I throw out all but my best like 5 pairs of socks,
you'll be doing laundry a lot.
I'll be doing laundry a lot, but more to the point, I'll probably go out and buy some more socks, you know? Right. And then I have...
Well, that's because you're very privileged.
Well, for socks, that's another whole issue. That clothing is these days very cheap. So, like compared to incomes, it's just like objectively a lot cheaper than it used to be. So,
yes. So you can
probably buy new socks. Yeah.
Running jokes about how you can buy a pack of 6 tube socks for $1.99.
Right. So that's easily doable. But there was actually, I think this was in The Guardian, some article about how the KonMari method could lead just to sort of filling landfills, because if you don't like stuff, you throw it out, and then actually you do need to have whatever it is. So
there are worse things that could happen. I mean, if you have the money, you can just get some new socks. Someone did a tweet once that actually kind of struck home with me, and it said, pro tip: just throw away all your socks and underwear and buy new ones, and you'll feel.
That's actually. Once I went on vacation, I was going to visit my in-laws in Belgium, and completely forgot to bring any socks at all, and had to buy new socks there. And they're like nice because they're like Belgian socks. So now, I'm sure they're made in the same factory as the socks in North America, but it felt very special, even though I was very embarrassed. I still have some of those socks. But moving on from that really riveting topic of...
Well, if there's a fond memory of those particular socks, I think Marie Kondo would say hold on to them.
Well, yeah. But I guess what I found just so fascinating in terms of... And it's a little... strays a bit from the whole stuff thing specifically, but the response I got to this article was like half people saying, how dare you not include all the other forms of bigotry that enter into minimalism, and the other half, and I don't know if it was half and half, but whatever, the other part was people saying, oh my God, everything is considered sexist now. People are so outraged.
Well, what are this will be the last thing on this particular topic. What are the how is minimalism xenophobic?
Yes. So it just kept getting some of this was sort of presented as a kind of yes and it made sense. So basically, yes, minimalism is also classist in that, as we've discussed, like certainly going to whatever fancy vacations, all of this. I guess the racism, only one person brought this up, and this I think was on Facebook, that I'd forgotten about racism, and I found that surprising simply because Tony is not white. So that's why I don't talk about his white privilege. He mentions having Middle Eastern immigrant parents who are Middle Eastern Christians. I don't know specifically beyond this, but basically he is not like... There was a picture, like a stock photo with my article of some white bros, Yeah. So I think that may have been, it was a wonderful photo, but I think that may have been where this entered into it. I think what came up in this Facebook conversation was that going out in the world, and this is undeniably true, there is, white ease in that, like in terms of being harassed in all number of ways, including police brutality and all of this, which I think is all true. I think the connection to minimalism, I didn't totally follow.
Okay.
It seemed like a fair point that I just didn't quite see how it related to minimalism, but yeah.
Okay, if there's someone out there who's watching this who believes that the modern trend towards minimalism does embody racism, I invite them to come on Blogging Heads and discuss it with me, because it doesn't make any sense to me. Especially because, this is something that's pioneered by a woman who's from Japan. So I don't know how white privilege figures into it. If you want to talk about our final topic, maybe just briefly, because I think it kind of confuses both of us, which is the state of the celebrity profile.
Oh, yes. Okay.
A young actress named Margot Robbie. Is that what we decided?
Yes, we decided it's Robbie. I'll ask her. Oh, hi, Margot. Just kidding. She's a very beautiful 26-year-old fresh new face. I use the word fresh because in his Vanity Fair profile of her, Rich Cohen, the journalist who wrote the profile.
Yeah, I mean, talk about, Jesus, the alt-right guys is going to have a field day with this. This video.
His name is Rich Cohen. Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Cohen.
The parentheses. Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's
a middle-aged man.
Yeah, who apparently had written something similar about Alicia Silverstone when she was 18, which can't have been 5 minutes ago because I know she's older than I am, and 18 would have been a while ago. So
the 90s for sure.
Yes. So basically, it's just the very template fawning / ogling celebrity profile, where it's about basically how hot she is, and she's a very attractive actress. That's
when this ran in Vogue or
Vanity Fair. So this has gone
just like the serious one of these books.
I think this was Vanity Fair. Yeah. So this has gotten it went sort of viral with a lot of very funny kind of memes popping up where somebody replaced the article with the lyrics to some pop song, possibly from the 90s, that was like some sort of ogly pop song. Like, there have been various funny things done with this. Basically, the serious critique of it, though, that emerged, and that actually was most sort of effectively made in an article from 2013 that was in The Walrus by Carly Lewis, that was before this particular celebrity profile, is that basically men write these profiles, and isn't it terrible that these bombshell actresses are treated as, and also just female celebrities in general are sort of treated as these objects, and wouldn't it be better if female journalists profiled famous actresses instead, and wouldn't we get a more nuanced or deep, portrait of this actress? And I think that's
right.
Yeah. So my take on this was, on the one hand, yes, I want my friends who are female entertainment journalists to have more work. That's great. Yes, it's annoying when an article is like this, but I thought two things were off about this. I mean, one is that I thought that it's always described as the journalist wants to sleep with the actress. And I don't know that that's even true. I think this is an act. I think this is something they're expected to do for the genre. Whether or not they do, I think is unknowable. I think this is just like the marketing. Like, for all we know, Rich Cohen's type is like completely different. I don't even know anything about him.
No, what Rich Cohen's type. Let's leave that.
Yes, but I'm saying that I think that this is
Let's erase the mystery on that one.
So I thought that was
the assumption that really the guy's a horn dog.
Yes.
He wants desperately to get into the young starlet.
Yes.
Dance.
When I think that's just promotional material, and like, whether I think it's kind of irrelevant. I mean, you could say that they would only assign this then to a male journalist because it's, it fits that sort of narrative. But it seems to me like there's a bigger story, and this came up a bit, in terms of, there was a tweet by, I believe he's a New York Times style writer, and Matthew Schneier, that was about pointing out basically that this is like, that the photos accompanying this are like super like corny, like these, it's like these bathing suit photos, like she's emerging from swimming pools. It's not just the writing that's the issue. So I think there's a bigger story there, and also just in terms of who is an actress to begin with, and that there had been some infographic going around about like the relative age of the female star and the male star in different movies. So I think there's just a lot more going on than the, I think that to just say that the problem is that the conventionally gorgeous 26-year-old actress doesn't get, that's my dog saying, I'm going to just show her to blogging heads briefly.
Oh yeah, the fans love the one the dog or cat interrupts.
Okay.
Blogging heads.
So that's yeah.
Okay, so well, here's my I saw this bubbling up on Twitter. I think I maybe read the first paragraph of this article. Immediately decided it was not worth my time.
Yeah.
Moved on with my life. Why is there an assumption that we can't even say her name correctly. Margot Robbie has anything interesting to say, that there's anything interesting about her at all. Exactly.
Well, it's because, I don't know what she's like as an actress, but...
Me neither. We couldn't name... She's in the new Tarzan movie? Is that her claim to fame?
I think so. It seems like she's certainly famous, at least in part, because she's very conventionally attractive, and I don't know that what the world is...
About women to grow up being very attractive.
I'm moving just to calm down my dog. Yes.
Then she doesn't really have anything interesting to say there. Being attractive,
this is going to be too dark.
Why do we care what celebrities have to say? This is maybe too deep a question. How we're at.
Yes.
Why do we assume that Margot Robbie has anything interesting to say?
Right. I think
26-year-old doesn't have anything interesting to say.
Certainly not. The average 32-year-old is, though, very, very important.
Yeah, once 33 is definitely the cutoff, but suddenly you've acquired some wisdom in life. No, but
yes. I think that's... Yeah, I think that the issue is definitely more that... why is that the person in the spotlight to begin with, in a certain sense? And the question of who specifically is interviewing any celebrity is kind of secondary. it's also important, but for different reasons, and that the issue just is a lot goes a lot further than that. And I think, it just fits in with. Let's
say that a Rich Cohen was actually, Regina Cohen, and had written the same piece more or less. It would have been slobbering, but if it still essentially sucked.
Yeah.
Well, then I guess we're happy that a woman got to write a cover story for Vanity Fair instead of a man. It's still garbage.
Yeah, I think that the hope would be that I think this is more relevant when it's a celebrity who's got a little more sort of known substance, and there's some reason we're interested in this person beyond that they look nice in a bathing suit.
This is not someone who's been nominated for an Academy Award. This is not, her name is escaping me, the woman who's in the Hunger Games movies, who seems like a very smart, intelligent
person.
What is her name?
Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah, J-Law is with it.
Yeah.
I'm sure you could write 5,000 interesting words about J-Law. But Margot, I'm sorry, come back to us in 5 years, and once you've been through the Hollywood grinder, and we'll see if there's anything interesting to say about you.
Yeah, I think this was just basically, the usual sort of cycle of mix of where there can be a little feminist arguments and a little sort of titillation images, and I don't know. It's great
clickbait.
It is. So we'll have to present this as just the Margot Robbie bikini episode, and then people will be very interested.
If there'll be a one frame insert of Margot Robbie in a bikini that if you go by frame through this video, you'll find. No, I guess I don't have anything more to add. I don't care about Margot Robbie, and I don't care that someone wrote a shitty profile of Margot Robbie.
But it's impressively shitty.
Okay, if it's hilariously bad, then that would be interesting.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best part of it.
Donald Trump is talking about plane stars and sheriff stars. It's much more interesting things happening in the world.
That's true.
And that's Margot Robbie.
Yeah.
Although I haven't seen the Tarzan movie, and I'm sure it's going to be just great.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay, we're probably at the end of our time. and have exhausted the patience of our audience. Is there? So a link to all the pieces included. I encourage everyone to read "Bros Before Homes," which is an entertaining short essay on experience versus stuff. Where can people find your stuff, Phoebe Maltz Bovy?
A lot is in the New Republic, but I highly encourage people to, if they remember this, in almost a year from now, to read The Perils of Privilege, coming out with the St. Martin's Press in the U.S. So
okay, well,
and What Would Phoebe Do? My blog. That's the other thing.
We'll include links to that stuff. Unfortunately, you're presupposing that America will still exist in 9 or so months.
Yeah, well, here's hoping.
The way things are going, I think that's not a certainty, but we'll bring Nate Silver in here and he'll tell us what the odds are. But thanks for coming on, Phoebe. And
well, thanks for having me. This was great.
We'll see all of our viewers and listeners again next time.
Bye.